Fall is upon us. That means football is upon us. The 2024 to 2025 NFL Power Rankings coming right at you. Time to get everyone's panties all in a bunch. Number 32, the Carolina Panthers. So the Panthers, I think, were the worst team last year. And I don't really think much is going to change with Carolina. Um, they did the thing that a lot of people don't like when you hear guys that like to talk about team building do at the quarterback position. A lot of people are wary about drafting a quarterback that's just, an average athlete and slight. They said the same thing about Kyler Murray, but Kyler Murray's, built like a fucking little man, even though he's 5'9". He's got a running back's build. Um, Youngest has dealt with a bunch of little nagging injuries here and there, and he's played through a lot. Not enough around him with his skill set for him to thrive at the moment. I do like some of the pickups they made. They were 12 and 15 last year. They have a first-year coach this year, David Canales. The best offensive player is Akeem Ekwonu, standout left tackle. Their best defensive player is Derek Brown, who had like 100 tackles playing defensive tackle last year. He's a stud. Their offseason was a C minus. I mean, their best pick was, they picked up Xavier Legette. Xavier Legette, kind of more of like an Anquan Bolden mold, like big, strong, super athletic. Not saying he's going to be Anquan Bolden when I just make a play style comparison. The question mark for this team is, how does Bryce Young play in, year two? I liked what they did picking up Deontay Johnson. I think he fits, Bryce Young's strong suit. Bryce Young actually does have some arm talent in terms of his quick releases during like middle of the field routes, short throws, crossing routes, and he's accurate with those types of throws. I think Deontay Johnson will help him with that, and I think it's going to help them move the chains. This team still doesn't have the pieces to be a down the field thrower, and I really don't think that that's Bryce Young's strong suit. If he stay healthy, he has rushing upside, but I don't see this team being any better than they were last year. They lost some pieces, Freddie Luvu, Jeremy Chin on defense. So I really don't think that I think this team's going to be right about where they are. They picked up starting running back Jonathan Brooks. I don't know how they're going to mix him in. He could run a little bit inside, outside, catch the ball. So it's going to be interesting to see what this team does under Dave Canales. Their floor is 2 and 15, just like last year. They're ceiling at most, that's being generous, 5 and 12. 32, Carolina Panthers. Number 31 could arguably be the worst team in the league we've talked about before. Last year, the Patriots were 4 and 13. First year coach Gerard Mayo. Best offensive player Ramondre Stevenson, who I really like. Best defensive player Kyle Duggar, safety. More of an in the box safety, not the best in coverage, although he's improved in that. Their offseason grade, I give it a C. They went out and they drafted Drake May. I mean, he's looked okay in the preseason, but the rest of their draft really, wasn't all that great. And there's also been a quarterback battle between Drake May and, oh, God, I forget his name, the backup quarterback there who could do a little bit of running and has a pretty strong arm there. His name's escaping me. Joe Milton. And also, I don't know who the actual starter is on this team. They have Jacoby Brissett, too. They might be starting Jacoby Brissett to start off the season. I'm not exactly sure. And Jacoby Brissett can win you some games. So, my question mark for them is the play style and personnel has stunned them recently. With a rookie quarterback, a new head coach, Bill Belichick, from the Bill Belichick tree, what does this team look like? I just think that Bill Belichick's system has always been a system where you need a certain level and style of players to be overtly successful in it. And right now, this team does not have any of that, in my opinion. Floor 2 and 15, ceiling 6 and 11. I think the 6 and 11 is generous. Number 31, New England Patriots. Number 30, the Minnesota Vikings. So they were higher on the first couple drafts that I did of this, but now their team's decimated. They losing everyone to injury. Last year they were 7 and 10. Coaches Kevin McConnell. Best offensive player Justin Jefferson. Best defensive players Byron Murphy Jr. I give their offseason, an A grade. I liked what they did in the offseason. I thought it was odd with the little trade that they made. Was it them that traded like with was it them that traded with like a rival? I can't remember. They coughed up like weird selections to gain selections back. But I like what they did, finally going out and getting their quarterback, J.J. McCarthy, who looked good against number ones in training camp and in preseason, and now he's hurt for the rest of the season. Floor 5-12, ceiling 8-9. I mean, I don't think they hit that 8-9. I definitely don't think they hit an 8-9. I think they probably fall somewhere in the middle. They could fall even lower than that. So Minnesota Vikings, number 30. Tennessee Titans, record 6-11. Coach Brian Callahan, his first year. Best offensive player, DeAndre Hopkins. Best offensive player, Jeffrey Simmons. Offseason grade, B. They had a decent little offseason. Will Levis, I didn't think he looked so bad last year. I think that he has arm talent. I think he just needs some experience, and I just think he needs to make better decisions with the football. And he's got a little bit of a rushing upside, too. But this team's just really not all that good. Their offensive line's not great. They lost Derrick Henry. They're going to be rolling out Tajay Spears in a running back committee. And defensively, front seven's okay, but, they could be had on the back half. They just lost a bunch of players. Could they be competitive if Will Levis plays well? Possibly, but I don't see this team really being that competitive unless he takes a serious jump. And I also don't think they have the firepower for him to optimize any jump he could make. So my question mark for this team is, can Will Levis build on a solid rookie campaign? Possible. Floor 4-13, ceiling 7-10. Number 28, the Denver Broncos, record 8-9. Just looking at my notes here. Record 8-9, head coach Sean Payton in his second year. Best offensive players, Cortland Sutton, Javonte Williams. Best defensive player, Patrick Surtain Jr. There's a lot of speculation they're going to trade Patrick Surtain Jr. I think that's absolutely nuts. He's established himself as pretty much a top 5 corner in this league. 6'2", 205 pounds, long, strong, fast. Pretty much can do everything. My thing is, what is this team going to look like? Sean Payton plays a very specific style, a very accurate attacking the seams and the sidelines. More, I wouldn't say it's so much dink and dunk. I just think it's very much safety, multiple levels of making reads and safety valving everything. It's very much make your reads, get the ball out real quick type scheme. It was at its best when, they had the right personnel where Drew Brees could take more shots down the field, even though he didn't have the greatest arm. I think Bo Nix fits the mold of what they're trying to do there. He looks good in preseason, but it remains to be seen, what his ceiling's going to look like. In this division, the division outside of the Chiefs isn't going to be really all that great here. So any of the other 3 teams outside of the Chiefs could, look better than they really are. I'll say 5-12 is the floor, and the ceiling is 7-10 for the Broncos. So, they lost a lot of stuff. Jerry Jeudy, some offensive and defensive players. I don't expect the Broncos to be too great. Number 27, the New Orleans Saints. It's a shame, just really stagnant. It's weird. They have a lot of talent on both sides of the ball, but some of it's aging. Record 9-8. Coach Dennis Allen, who I think's on the hot seat if they suck again, or if they're middle of the pack again this year, they're probably going to go down after paying Derek Carr. He's probably going to be fired. Chris Olave is the best offensive player. Best defensive player is Marshawn Lattimore. Off-season grade is a C. They're in cap hell, and they're probably just going to be competitive again. I like their defensive backs. I mean, I think their front seven's kind of a little underrated. They're going to be solid defensively. But they're, it's Derek Carr. Like, you just don't know what you're going to get out of Derek Carr, and he's never really consistent. I see this team just being like a very competitive football team again. Floor 6-11, ceiling 8-9. So the Arizona Cardinals record 14-3 last year. Third year head coach, Sean Gannon. Best offensive player is Kyler Murray. Best defensive player is Budda Baker. Offseason grade. Thought they did all right, their offseason pickups. I like some of their young players, BJ Ojulari that they picked up. the other year who's emerged as like a pretty decent player. Um, I think Kyler Murray is underrated in terms of his skill set, his actual ability to physically play the position. He has arm talent for days. Like he can make every throw, underrated velocity on the ball. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, he's too short or whatever. Um, I don't think it's hindered him as much as people think it's hindered him. I do think it's weird seeing him back there being as short as he is, but he's actually pretty accurate on deep balls uh, in most instances. I think his problem is his decision making and his ability to make reads and understand what defenses are doing. It's literally written in his contract that he needs to study more and study the game more. I mean, he's made some plays that are just absolutely boneheaded at times in games, and I think that's the only thing that's stopping him from being, a really good player in this league. They picked up Marvin Harrison Jr., which is huge for them. Speed, route running, large catch radius at 6'4". I think it's a perfect player to go along with Trey McBride, who was fantastic for them last year. They drafted Benson, the rookie running back, and I think their skill positions are going to be solid. The real question is going to be, is this offensive line going to hold up enough for them to do their thing? I actually think they played tough last year in a lot of football games, even though they're forward 13. I actually like them to be a little better than people think this year. My question mark for them, build on tough outings from years past. And basically, what are you going to get out of Kyler Murray, the offensive line? Defensively, I think they're going to be bad, so they're going to need to score points. But floor, 5-12, ceiling, 8-9. So the New York Giants. I think this is about, where most places have the Giants. I mean, I had them a little higher, but I waited to watch a handful of preseason games from all these teams before I made my decisions. And I know it's preseason, and everyone's like, oh, it's preseason, don't fucking matter. But when you watch number ones go up against number ones, there's certain things you could see and things I look for. They didn't really look particularly that great on offense, in my opinion, throughout preseason so far. They were 6-11 last year. Head coach Brian Daboll could possibly be on the hot seat, in my opinion. Best offensive player, Andrew Thomas, absolute animal, left tackle. And they got good pieces. Dexter Lawrence, D tackle, arguably probably now the best defensive tackle in the league. You make the argument. They picked up Ryan Burns, which is huge. They got Bobby Okereke. I like a lot of the pieces they have. They got some young defensive backs that are solid, but, they lost some defensive backs last year as well. Their offseason grade, though, I give their offseason grade an A. Picking up Malik Neighbors, who hopefully could come in and be a certified number one. A lot of people don't like his size, but, there's a lot of really good wide receivers in the league that are 6 foot. He can run the whole entire route tree, really explosive in and out of his breaks, can catch the ball. Solid running after the catch. Just a really, you could make an argument he was the most well-rounded and overtly skilled wide receiver coming out in this draft. And I love everything else they did in the offseason, bolstering their offensive line. I think letting Saquon Barkley go, this was one of the rare instances, though, where considering the makeup of the team and where the team is at currently, I think having a guy that could catch the ball out of the backfield and run the ball like that probably would have helped him. Just having as many weapons as you can for Daniel Jones. Ideally, I don't think you need to pay a lot of money for the running back position, but I think in their position, it wouldn't have been a bad idea to keep him if you thought he was going to stay healthy. But I think they're finally rebuilding in the right way. Typically, if my team was better, I wouldn't mind letting the running back go. In fact, I'd trade a running back if I didn't think he was going to be healthy or be like a top 3 producer. So, but I like the directions the Giants are going into. It basically is going to come down to how Daniel Jones plays. I hear talk. I have multiple buddies that are Giants fans, and I hear all this talk about how underrated all these wide receivers and these weapons are and stuff like that. Well, they just got a guy who could possibly be a number one. They bolstered the offensive line. I don't know how much of a long leash you can give a quarterback, but this is Daniel Jones, like, 5th year in the league? He's got to show he's the guy to keep. Floor, 6-11. The division's going to be a lot weaker this year, in my opinion, so 9-8. They could possibly go 9-8. depending on what they get out of Daniel Jones and the defense. So if the defense holds strong, Daniel Jones plays to the way I think he could play, they could definitely be a tough out. So Giants, 25. Number 24, the Las Vegas Raiders. So the Las Vegas Raiders were a tough one for me to place because the Raiders, they have good core players at different spots, but I just don't think they've done a good job for years building teams, or at least in my opinion, since I was young, building teams, since the days where they were going and winning Super Bowls, because people forget that they won Super Bowls when we were young. Super Bowl, I think. Head coach Antonio Pierce, record 8-9. Best offensive player, Devontae Adams. Best defensive player, Max Crosby. Off-season, I gave their off-season a B plus. I would have liked to see them get a quarterback, to be honest with you. I mean, Gardner Minshew, he can win you some games. But he's very much a very conservative quarterback. He's not going to make a lot of mistakes, but he doesn't have crazy arm talent. He's going to keep you in games. And he can play pretty good on occasion, but it's not what you're looking for, especially when you got Devontae Adams and this tight end room. They got some playmakers here. They lost their best offensive player outside of Devontae Adams. I always forget his name. Their running back went to Green Bay. So I really think they're going to struggle to run the football because the offensive line really isn't all that great. I like their pickup in Brock Bowers. I think he could do a little bit of everything. You could flex him outside, flex him inside. Not much of a blocker, but I do love their pickup in Jackson Powers Johnson. Really good offensive lineman, very versatile. You could play him all over the offensive line, probably everywhere except for tackle. But yeah, they had a decent little offseason here trying to build a team. I like the picks, going offensive line and getting yourself another weapon for the quarterback position, but I think they could possibly be playing for a quarterback next year. There's a decent amount of quarterbacks that are coming out. I don't think the quarterbacks coming out next year are as good as the ones that just came out, unfortunately. But we'll see. Pierce has gotten his first full season. Floor 6-11. Ceiling in a weak division. They could possibly get 9 wins. We'll see. 24, Las Vegas Raiders. Number 23, the Washington Commanders. So I think the Washington Commanders are going to be a sneaky team this year. Jaden Daniels looks really, really good. Getting the ball out quick. He's got a really quick release, makes good reads, and with the added running dimension, I think that this offense is going to be a lot better than people think. He's got Terry McLaurin. He's got Austin Eckler now in the backfield, which I really like for him to have himself a good little safety valve. Brandon Coleman has merged at left tackle for them, and he's looking really good. They picked up Luke McCaffrey, solid little wide receiver, but with, Terry McLaurin, De'Ami Brown, Luke McCaffrey, they got Zach Ertz, which, Zach Ertz will offer them a really good, underneath and red zone threat. They got Brian Robinson Jr. obviously coming back, carrying the heavy load on the ground. Dan Quinn his first year, I don't like that pickup as a head coach. Defensive head coach. I do like the fact that they picked up Bobby Wagner, and until Bobby Wagner doesn't stop grading out in the fucking 90s every year at 400 years old, then I'm just going to suspect that he's going to be top 5 at the middle linebacker position every year, which that's going to help them huge because they got hogs up front. I actually love their front 7 this year. The only thing I'm worried about with this team is, their back half, their DBs. The DBs have got to step up, but I love the offseason. Thought their pickups were really good in the offseason. Best offensive player, Terry McLaurin. Best defensive player, Bobby Wagner and Jonathan Allen. Added a lot of talent, but is Quinn the right coach? We'll see. Number 23, 6-11 is their floor. Ceiling, 9-8. 23, Washington Commanders. The LA Chargers, this is a tough one because their record last year was 5-15, and they had a lot more talent. I do think Jim Harbaugh is going to fit the talent that they have perfectly and come in, and he knows how to play winning football, and he knows how to build a good defense and cultivate a balanced attack. And I think the skill set that Justin Herbert has will go well in John Harbaugh system, a guy that can run it a little bit, do a little play action, has a cannon for an arm. They're going to look to be balanced and take deep shots down the field. The only problem with that is they lost all their wide receivers, so it's going to be interesting to see what guy steps up out of that pack. This team went 5-12. Justin Herbert's the best player on offense. Derwin James, or number 2, some people like to call him for fear for jinxing it. Off-season grade. I gave their off-season grade an A-. I actually like what they did in the offseason. They went out and got Ladd McConkey, who was an underrated wide receiver out of Georgia. They picked up a right tackle and Joe Alt, bolstering their offensive line. They picked up a corner in Cam Hart, who I think is underrated. I just think they went out and got, 2 starters on the offensive side of the football, and I think it's really going to help what they're trying to do here with this team. Interested to see who's going to come out as like the lead running back here. Gus Edwards is their starting running back. J.K. Dobbins, who's always fucking hurt. I mean, if they could keep him healthy, then, he has a path to being a very, heavy volume guy because he can catch the ball out of the backfield too. But I do like what they've decided to do in the direction that they're going. They have an identity. Jim Harbaugh is going to play strong, try to play his best defense as he can, play balanced football. And I think there's something to be said for, if you know what you want to be and do it really well, you can win a lot of football games. Sadly, I don't think this team has enough juice at the skill positions to be all that good. They went out and they got rid of most of their bad contracts. They still have Khalil Mack, which I can't recall how well Khalil Mack played last year, but he has a hefty contract, and I'm wondering what they could have got if they cut that. But they moved off Keenan Allen, who had a lot of money left on the table that they saved by cutting him, but he quietly was wicked fucking good last year. I just feel like right now, if they would have kept Keenan Allen, I think that would have helped them a lot. Bad division, floor 6-11. If things swing right for them and some players step up, they could and the division's not that good outside of Kansas City, they could piece together 10-7 wins. If 10 wins if guys emerge, but I think it's going to be somewhere in the middle, probably closer to 6-11. But we'll see. Chargers 22. Indianapolis Colts. So the Colts are an interesting one because the Colts were 8-9 or 9-8 last year, and they're kind of like I always say this. They're kind of like a meat and potatoes kind of team. Like, they have talent all over the place. And they got some tough players, and they kind of piecemeal it all together. Not really particularly great, really, in my opinion. Like, great at anything. I mean, when Jonathan Taylor's healthy, they could run the ball. But you got to remember, the offensive line wasn't what it was when Jonathan Taylor came into the league. The offensive line was really good back then, run blocking, one of the better ones in the league. Indianapolis last year was 9-8. Coach Shane Steichen, best offensive player, Jonathan Taylor, best defensive player, DeForest Buckner, offseason grade, B-. I loved what they did taking Adonai Mitchell, and I think he's going to come out and be an instant impact on this team. Wide receiver, really good route runner. He kind of reminds me of a thicker CeeDee Lamb play style. I don't think he's as athletic as CeeDee Lamb. I think he's a little more bulkier, more like run after the catch guy, but he can run every route. And again, we talk about, everyone loves the fast guys, but he got way wider open than Xavier Worthy did in college. And they both got one-on-one coverage because they were both good. And I was like, someone's going to get a steal on Adonai Mitchell, and these guys picked him up. He actually scored a touchdown the other night. I do like the direction this team's going in terms of building this team up. It's really going to come down to, they're going to be good on defense, but Anthony Richardson, is he going to stay healthy, first and foremost? And secondly, he has never been really an accurate quarterback, and at some point, man, you got to be accurate. You could run and do all these other things, but there's going to be times where you need to step up in the pocket and deliver darts downfield to guys. They have the weapons to do it. I think they have the personnel in this team to actually be really good this year. But I'm just worried that the inaccuracy in the vision of Anthony Richardson is going to make it so they have struggles. I think their floor is pretty high. I think it's 8-9. I think they could win one, maybe 2 more games. I have it at 10-7. The division's not that strong, but they got to deal with the Texans now. So we'll see. Indianapolis Colts, fun little team. Talent on both sides of the ball. 21. So the Seattle Seahawks. So the Seattle Seahawks have been pretty much played the same style of football. I don't fucking know since I can fucking remember. So they're bringing in Mike McDonald for the first year. I don't know a super lot about how Mike McDonald is going to approach playing with this team, because I do think their personnel offensively, because Mike McDonald's an offensive coach, I do think their personnel is right now is very indicative of a style of play that they've always been playing. Run the ball very heavy and take shots deep down the field. And that really hasn't been formulating to them like getting over the hump. Now, obviously, they've had defensive deficiencies and things of that nature, but Seattle went 9-8 last year. Best players are DK Metcalf and Kenneth Walker at running back. Best defensive player now is Tyreek Woolen. Offseason grade, I give him a B minus. They got Byron Murphy II, which I think was a smart pickup for them. They really needed help in the trenches, and that's where they struggled. They don't really have a presence there at defensive tackle. The QB dynamic is going to be interesting because they picked up a 4,000-yard passer. He threw 25 and 25. I get it. He threw a lot of interceptions. But some of the best quarterbacks have thrown a fuck ton of interceptions, especially when they're young. I am still a fan of the talent of Sammy Howell out there doing Lord's work. I think he could push for quality reps here and possibly be the starter here if Geno Smith doesn't play well. And team health is huge. I like what they have with Jackson Smith and Jigba, Byron Murphy Jr., the young players. DK Metcalf is a little bit limited, in my opinion, in terms of his route tree, which in certain situations when you need a guy to actually run routes into certain coverages and actually shake defenders off and get open, that's really not his game. And until he shows that he can develop that, he's going to be very much a post, fly, flag, drag guy, which at certain times, route running is like being able to create a shot. It's like half court offense. Like there are certain situations where you have to be more intricate of a route runner and actually shuck a guy off and get to the open space, not just running into the open space. You got to create open space. And he doesn't have the agility and the ability to get out of cuts to do that. It's whatever. He's still an effective football player. So it's going to be interesting to see how they actually play, because I actually think Jackson Smith and Jigba is probably going to be that guy for them. Jackson Smith and Jigba, not the athlete or the size, obviously, is DK Metcalf, but I think he has a very high threshold for route running, skill set, catching the ball. I actually think he's going to be a breakout player this year. This team's going to be okay defensively. I think they have holes in different places. We'll see if they shore up that defensive line. That's the really huge thing. I like their DBs. I like some of their linebackers, but this team, I think their floor is right about what they did last year. And I think in this division, it's possible they could be 10-7, maybe. Seattle 20. 19, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 9-8 last year. Head coach Todd Bowles. Best offensive player is Mike Evans. Best defensive player is Vita Vea and Levante David. Levante David out here still going strong like a boss. Still one of the best linebackers in the league. God, he's got to be 35, 36 years old, something like that. But still just so good, so instinctive, so just high IQ player, and a sure tackler. Off-season grade, I give it a B+. They picked up Graham Barton at center, which they really needed a center. I like Jalen McMillan, their wide receiver, that they picked up out of the University of Washington. And they got a couple other good young guys that are under the radar, like safety Tyke Smith, and running back there, Bucky Irving. But Rashad White's going to get, obviously, the bulk of the carries here. They re-signed all their key free agents. Can they run it back? Can Baker Mayfield have, a sophomore year with them that's really good again? I think this team will be competitive and compete for the division again. I just think this team is what it is. I think it's a solid defensive team. I think that they have solid pieces on offense with an okay offensive line and a quarterback who can make every throw, but is a little bit of a gunslinger and can make mistakes and just a little bit limited in overall profile of skill set. Not as consistent, even though he can make all the throws. But I think Tampa Bay could be right in the mix for their division and be competitive. So Tampa Bay, 19. So 18, this is a team that had a hard time placing because I think they might have arguably the most variance of any team in this league when you look at the Jacksonville Jaguars and some of the talent they have at places. They went 9-8 last year, which is a regression with Doug Peterson, who's a great coach, Super Bowl winning coach. Best offensive player is Trevor Lawrence. Best defensive player is Josh Allen, who's an elite pass rusher. Offseason grade, B+. I like what they did going out and get another weapon, a long, tall, rangy, fast receiver, and Brian Thomas Jr. I think he's going to be a solid player for them. Outside of that, I mean, I think it's what they were supposed to do, which is why I graded it a B. Outside of that, I mean, their draft is not really anything to write home about, but I think they got a good player at that spot. Will Lawrence maintain his form? That'll be the biggest thing. He didn't play really all that great last year. In my opinion, this offensive line really isn't that great. I mean, you look at it on paper, and it looks solid, but it just hasn't really played great. Cam Robinson, Ezra Cleveland, Mitch Morse, Brandon Scherf, and Anton Harrison. On paper, that should be a really good defense or offensive line. Should it mesh? Will it mesh? I don't know. Where they get had is on the defensive line, particularly stopping the run. They're not that great at stopping the run. Strength is their defensive backs. I really love their ability to coverage. Their linebackers can cover. I think this team will be competitive, and I think that if everything clicks for this team, they actually could be pretty damn good. But it's always wishy-washy with them lately. 8-9 is the floor. Ceiling's 10-7. 18 Jacksonville Jaguars. So Pittsburgh Steelers is another team where I think the variance could be kind of wide. I actually think that they could possibly have their first losing season this year with the quarterback battle going on there. They're not really that good on offense, in my opinion, with like their personnel. And I think with the quarterback battle and stuff, I really think they're not going to figure out, the nuance of how they want to implement their style. Why? Can't stand this phone. Sorry about that. 10-7 was their record last year, which is crazy. Mike Tomlin's never had a losing season. Best offensive player, George Pickens. Best defensive player, TJ Watt. Off-season grade. I thought their off-season grade, I thought it was an A-. I really like what they did in the draft and in the offseason, some of the players that they've picked up. I'm trying to find my notes. So they went out and got Zach Frazier, who's an underrated center, which I think was a position of serious need. They also got Troy Fautanu, underrated right tackle. I think they're smart by trying to bolster that offensive line because they're going to need it. Roman Wilson could possibly emerge as like their slot guy or possibly their number 2. I actually think he's a really underrated player, wide receiver out of Michigan. Not the biggest athlete, but solid route runner, solid athlete, sure hands. I just like what he could possibly bring them. But you look at their team, it's the same. It's a similar team from last year besides bolstering their offensive line a little bit. Russell Wilson, in my opinion, is cooked. Justin Fields brings you the rushing ability, and that's cool, but at some point you got to be consistent throwing the football down the field, and he has not been consistent throwing the football down the field. I have been a huge defender of Justin Fields in what I think his talent is, how talented he is. But a big part of playing quarterback is between the ears. And I'm not saying he's not a smart player. He just has some bad habits. He holds on to the ball too long. He's too quick to fucking run out of the pocket. And he sees wide open players and he just doesn't make good reads and doesn't deliver the ball to them. I don't know. I just think that, we're coming up. It's like my buddy and I always talk about like how long do you keep a player, especially at the quarterback position. Dude, like how long are you going to keep a quarterback? 5-6 years? Are you going to be mediocre for 5-6 years? I think in most instances, that in most scenarios you could see if I think by year 3 or 4, if the guy can play. I think the only reason why teams are picking Fields up is because of his rushing ability. He's a really good football player. And with his rushing ability, he can get in the end zone. I just think you need a way better team for him to succeed. And I don't think this offense got enough juice for him to succeed. Floor 8-9, ceiling 10-7. Pittsburgh 17. Now a lot of people probably think it's controversial that I have Atlanta so high. But I really love, in a lot of ways, what Atlanta's been building. I just think it hasn't, clicked probably for them. Obviously, they need to get the quarterback situated right. But they went out, signed Kirk Cousins, who, if he's healthy, it'll immediately make this offense just light years better than it was. In my opinion, they have one of the best offensive lines in the league. They have good weapons. Last year, they were 7-10. Raheem Morris's first year. Interested to see what type of offenses and defenses he deploys. Their best offensive players are Kirk Cousins and Bijan Robinson. Best defensive players are Jesse Bates and A.J. Terrell. Their offseason grade, I give their offseason grade a B. I like Michael Penix Jr.'s college tape. The reason why I don't rate it higher is because he's a little bit older, and then you went out and you signed Kirk for his contract. It's kind of just like, I get it, you're going to sit it behind him, but I do like the player. I like his skill set, what he brings to the table. Quick release. Awkward release, but a quick release. He has a little bit of rushing upside, and he can drive the ball down the field. So I'm interested to see what happens with that going forward when they decide to play him, or, if Kirk doesn't play well. I expect Kirk plays good. This offensive line's really good. I said, is this the oddest NFL franchise of all time? Because they just do weird shit all the time. I don't know if anyone's seen the owner looking at the general manager when they signed a quarterback. They must have not had a conversation about that. He approached him and literally got in the guy's face and was talking to him like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? But I don't think there's anything wrong if you think the guy's the guy, drafting him and playing him behind, a seasoned veteran. Kirk Cousins seems like a nice guy from what I've seen. He probably will help. He'll probably help coach Michael Penix up. He doesn't seem like a fucking prick. So maybe it's the best, and maybe it's not the worst thing for Michael Penix to sit behind him for like a year or two. But if he does, he'll be like fucking closer to 30 when he comes out than he is to, 20. They picked up Darnell Mooney, which in my opinion is a big pickup, and I think he complements Drake May really well. Offensive line, in my opinion, stacked. Kyle Pitts, I think he has a bounce back year, and I think Bijan Robinson establishes himself as one of the best running backs this year. I think he's just going to be an all-purpose yard machine, touchdown machine this year. Catch the ball in the backfield, run inside, outside, long speed, make people miss. I just think he's the whole package. It's the type of running back I would consider spending some money on. A guy that can literally do everything. You can line him up all over the place. So I think that if everything works out for Atlanta, I think Atlanta could be a problem this year. Atlanta 15. Chicago Bears. So another one that people are going to think I'm crazy for, but I have the Chicago Bears at 14. Record last year, 7-10. Matt Eberflus is the coach. He could be on the hot seat this year if they don't do that great. And let's be real here. Matt Eberflus isn't the best coach. Like, if this team gets better, it's because they've upgraded their talent on both sides of the ball and at key positions. I just think they're really talented this year, and that's going to be the driving force behind this team. If I was them, I would probably if I was Chicago right now, I would probably seek out the best possible coaching option and dump some money in on that, because I think that this team could possibly be really, really, really good going forward. Best offensive players are DJ Moore and Keenan Allen. A lot of people don't know Keenan Allen came off a 1,000+ yard receiving season last year after he was fucking injured. Dude's an animal. DJ Moore's a beast. Jalen Johnson, among a lot of other defensive players. Jaquan Brisker, their front seven. They're just stacked on defense. Off-season grade, I give their off-season grade an A-. I mean, obviously everyone knew they were going to go out and get Caleb Williams, and Caleb Williams just ultra talented. I mean, a lot of people make comparisons to Patrick Mahomes and stuff like that, but always remember when you make a player comparison. I'm never making a player comparison as in, oh, I think he could be as good as that guy. It's just more of like play style, but he does fit that, ad lib off balance, accuracy off the back foot, accuracy while running, cannon of an arm, just accurate when he improvises, can run. He's got that scampering ability. Eyes always down the field when he's making his reads, when he's moving. I tried telling people that he's really talented and I get it. I'm right there with everyone with all the bullshit and the nonsense where, he thinks he's, entitled to like owning a team he's on, partial ownership, all these other things, and some of the dumb stuff that like he has said and shit. But the dude's really talented. This is one of the better drafts. They also picked up a number one who could be a number one wide receiver in my opinion, Rome Odunze. 6'3", 215, really fast, really good deep route runner, can separate, can go get the ball at the point of attack, and has run after the catch value. So this wide receiver core is stacked. Odunze, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore. Man, Braxton Jones at left tackle, who has been really good for them the past 2 seasons. Tevin Jenkins, who's improved. Nate Davis at right tackle, and Darnell Wright, who's solid as a rookie for them last year. They still got Cole Kmet, Gerald Everett. Obviously, Caleb Williams. They got DeAndre Swift, who, if he stays healthy, can, rack up a lot of catches and run mostly really good on those outside, off-tackle style sweeping runs. Khalil Herbert. They just have a ton of dudes to fucking spread the pill to, and their offensive line, in my opinion, is underrated. Defensively, they're going to be really good. Devontae Sweat, Andrew Billings, Javonte Dexter, linebacker core solid with TJ Edwards and fucking Tremaine Edmonds. Love their defensive backs. Tyreek Stevenson, Jaquan Brisker, Kevin Byard, Jalen Johnson, Kyler Gordon. Like, this team's going to be good next year. If this team's going to have a winning record next year, in my opinion. If Caleb Williams plays as good as I know he could play his rookie season, this team's going to have a winning record. This team has a possibility of being sneaky, really good and being a playoff team. So, Chicago 14. Oh, no. That was supposed to say 15. Chicago 15. Los Angeles Rams 14. 10-7. Coach Sean McVay. Best offensive player, Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. Best defensive player, Kobe Turner, defensive tackle. Offseason grade. I gave their offseason grade a B+. It was hard. This team's an interesting team to me because they very much move by a mold of what I've been saying. There's positions right now that are definitely just more impactful, more valuable. Then this team won a Super Bowl, obviously, against my Bengals with that formula. And I'm not saying they didn't have other good players in other positions. I'm talking about they paid big money to certain positions. They paid the quarterback, they paid the weapons, they paid the offensive tackles, they paid the pass rusher, they paid the corner. Now, corner, that's just a luxury that they had a corner as good as they had. But they paid the marquee of those important positions. Dude, they weren't super great on defense throughout the year. They were almost dead last in rushing, in every rushing metric. But they were so efficient and so good at throwing the ball and good enough on defense that they won a Super Bowl. It's pretty amazing, but they keep doing that. They got Puka Nacua, who was outstanding as a rookie last year, 1,300 yards. They gave like 11 touchdowns. Just a fucking beast, dude. Just a catch and fucking yak machine. Cooper Kupp, if he stays healthy, obviously is going to be great. I think he's going to be the number 2 now to Puka Nacua. My only issues is their offensive line is getting a little old at spots. Tyler Higbee hit the pup. But I do think with their offensive weapons, Kyron Williams, if he stays healthy, I think this team's going to be really good offensively. It's going to be interesting to see what this defense looks like without Aaron McDonald. But Kobe Turner and Bobby Brown III are quietly 2 of the best young defensive tackles in the league. They added Braden Fisk on the edge and Jared Verse on the edge. I think this defensive line could quietly be underrated. They added Cameron Curl to their secondary, and I actually think their secondary could be solid this year as a unit. They have a lot of depth there. I think this team's going to surprise people. I just think they're really going to score a fuck ton of points. their biggest thing is how is the team going to look without Aaron Donald, and if this team's going to stay healthy. If this team stays healthy, I think this team's going to be a playoff team just because of their sheer offensive output. If they play modest defense and Stafford stays upright, all their players stay healthy, they could break and be a pretty good team. I actually think that if they don't stay healthy, it could probably plummet. I think their floor could be lower than that if they're not healthy. So this all predicates on health. But Los Angeles Rams 14. 13, Miami Dolphins. A lot of people put Miami higher. And look, Miami could possibly win 11, maybe 12 games this year. But, I put them lower on the power rankings because they just choke in big games. They don't play well in big games, whether they've given up points or whether Tua's making mistakes. Guys just sometimes even though they're so talented, they're offensive players just don't show up in marquee games. But that being said, they were 11-6 last year. Mike McDonald's a good coach, good play caller. Best offensive player is Tyreek Hill. Best defensive player is Jalen Ramsey. Their off-season grade was a C. They really didn't do much in the offseason. This is a team I'm pretty sure didn't have a lot of draft picks and a lot of draft capital, because they've spent a lot of their money in their skill position players. I'm interested to see if Devin Achane plays a full season. Dude had fucking 7 yards a carry or some crazy shit. Obviously, you got Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill. Teron Armstead's going to be back. I don't know if he's going to be fully healthy, but the offensive line's okay. Tua, got to stay healthy, who they just paid $200 million. Obviously, you got Raheem Mostert, who's been a touchdown machine, A-Chain. This offense, you know what you're going to get with this offense. It's going to be high-paced, balanced run plays where they're going to pound the ball with Mostert and some of the bigger backs and then dump it off to A-Chain, stretch the field with A-Chain, and then take their shots to the middle and down the field. Luckily, Tua is super accurate and a great anticipatory thrower, so a lot of their best plays come from some of their play action stuff where Tua knows that he can accurately put the ball to a spot in the field, and Tyreek and Jalen Waddle can just run through the defense and go to that area and go get the ball. Defensively, I think they'll be okay. They got Calais Campbell, who continues to play really well into his old age. Jalen Phillips, who was good last year, I think could be a lot better this year. Jordan Brooks, solid pickup for them. Picked up Jordan Poyer in the offseason. Jalen Ramsey, Kendall Fuller. I think this team's going to be solid. I just think they just, in primetime games on the big stages and when they get in the playoffs, they tend to not play well. I just think this team's just very inconsistent at times, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So, floor 8-9, ceiling 11-6. Will this team be consistent and win big games? I don't know. Stay tuned next time for the next episode of Dragon Ball Z. Miami Dolphins, number 13. Number 12, the Dallas Cowboys. So, Dallas Cowboys, some places I've seen have them higher. Some places I've seen them lower. For me personally, I think I'm going to split the difference here a little bit because this team still has talent on both sides of the ball, even though they lost a lot of different players. Losing Van Der Esch, Tony Pollard, among other players. Smith. Tyron Smith went over to the Jets, which, if he's healthy, is going to be a huge pickup for them. But I still expect the Dallas Cowboys to be competitive, but it'll probably, be the same old song and dance. It'll be competitive. It'll be good all regular season, and then who knows what you're going to get in the playoffs. Most likely just a fucking L. They went 12-5 last year. Mike McCarthy's their head coach. I think he's on the hot seat. Best offensive player, CeeDee Lamb. You could argue Dak's the best player. Dak had a really good year last year, and I can make the argument that Dak should have been MVP last year. He threw 36 touchdowns, only 7 interceptions. And Baltimore Ravens really weren't any much more better than fucking any of these other good teams. So I don't understand how Lamar Jackson got MVP last year. Best defensive player, Micah Parsons. Offseason grade, an F. They really didn't pick up, any really good players to bolster their team. Jerry Jones said they were going to go all in, and they really didn't pick anyone up. I do like Tyler Guyton, though, who they drafted, which, I guess in hindsight, Tyler Guyton's looking like the real deal at left tackle. I think their offensive line's going to be good again. Tyler Guyton, Tyler Smith, Zach Martin, and Terrence Steele. That's one of the better offensive lines in the league. Dak Prescott's going to be good until he's not. But yeah, that Tyler Guyton pickup is absolutely huge to fill that spot in the left tackle. Is this McCarthy's last year? I really think no matter what happens, this is McCarthy's last year. This team's going to be really good on offense. This team's going to be good on defense until it's time for you to be important for you to be really good on defense, and then they won't be. They'll play like they're not a top 12 defense, especially when we get to the playoffs. All of a sudden, the defense is non existent. Cowboys, they'll be competitive. Floor, like I said, I think all the teams have regressed. No, I think the division has regressed. I think the two bottom teams have gotten a little bit better, and I think the two top teams have gotten a little bit worse. So I wouldn't say the division's fully regressed. I just think the top two teams aren't as strong as they were, especially Dallas. Floor 8-9, ceiling maybe 11-6. Dallas would be competitive, but you already know. Dallas number 12. Number 11, the Cleveland Browns. Record last year 11-6. Head coach Kevin Stefanski. Best offensive player Nick Chubb at running back. Best defensive player Myles Garrett, defensive end. Offseason grade C. They tied a lot of their money up and draft picks into acquiring players, and this team is absolutely fucking stacked on both sides of the ball. Really, we say it from time to time, but it's basically about will Watson come to form for this team. Watson at one point, in my opinion, was a top 5 quarterback in the league, probably like the 5th best quarterback in the league. And now, season or two, I think this is his 3rd season with Cleveland. Is he going to get his head out of his ass or what? Right now is the time for Cleveland to strike hot. This team is so talented, especially with some of their pickups. They picked up Jerry Jeudy in the offseason. I just think that this team has a window here to make a serious run if their quarterback can play well. And it's really coming down to that. I mean, if you look at their starting lineup, Jamari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore, their offensive line's one of the best in the league. David Njoku. I think Nick Chubb, if he's fully healthy at some point for the season, is going to come back and might not be as good as he was, but if there's any player that could come back and be as good as he was at that position, it's Nick Chubb. But Jerome Ford's no slouch, too. Jerome Ford's come in and had really quality snaps, and this defense is just stacked. Myles Garrett, fucking Zadarius Smith, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, Jordan Hicks, Devin Bush, Denzel Ward, Grant Delpit, Juan Thornhill, Martin Emerson. Just tons of really good players on defense, and they have depth at defense. This team's going to be really good next year. This team could be great even, depending on what Deshaun Watson decides to do out here. Floor 9-8, ceiling 11-6. Cleveland Browns 11. Number 10, the New York Jets. So I have the New York Jets lower, but I put them on here based off of projection, because until I see Aaron Rodgers play like shit, then I'm not going to pretend Aaron Rodgers is going to play like shit. So number 10, the New York Jets. Record last year 7-10. Coach Mohamed Salah. I think that unless they have a crazy playoff run, Mohamed Salah is going to get sacked this year. And personally, I would fucking sack him anyways. Go get a real head coach. Best offensive player, Aaron Rodgers. Best defensive player, Ahmad Gardner and Quinnen Williams. Their draft was a B. I like their offseason and their draft grade was a B. The key to this team is, will Rodgers stay healthy, essentially? And we already know what Rodgers brings to the table. Contrary to popular belief, he's a guy that, leads by example. I personally think he brings an underrated level of leadership. If you really watch and pay attention to him interacting with players, it really seems like a lot of these players on this Jets team love him. He's always talking shit and fucking with the players and shit. And it seems like they're pretty receptive. I actually love this roster. They added Tyron Smith in the offseason, which is huge. Elijah Vera Tucker, Morgan Moses is solid on the opposite side. I would have liked to see them get a better tight end or maybe start Jeremy Rucker. I think Jeremy Rucker's underrated, but they're going to roll with Tyler Conklin. Mike Williams, solid pickup. He could be a possible solid number 2, but he's hurt all the time. Garrett Wilson is electric. He's a real deal. I don't really need to go into how good Garrett Wilson is. Breece Hall could possibly be the best running back in the league next year. He could do absolutely everything, inside, outside, catch the ball, powerful runner, can run with long speed. Watch out for Braylon Allen. the 20-year-old backup running back for this team who could come in and probably get some goal line carries. I just like what they've built here on offense. Braylon Allen's only 20 years old, 6'2", 230 pounds, power runner. Kid's a beast. And then defensively, they could end up with the best defense in the league this year. Jermaine Johnson, Queenie Williams, Javon Kinlaw, Quincy Williams, Morgan Moses, Saman Gardner, Chuck Clark, Tony Adams, DJ Reed, Michael Carter II. They just have so many good players on the defensive side of the ball. And basically, if the Bills have been the rating division winners, the only way I see the Bills getting knocked off this year is if Aaron Rodgers is healthy and plays the best of his ability. This is the team that can knock the Jets off, or not knock the Bills off. So I have the Jets at 10. And as I say that, Buffalo Bills, number 9. I've seen places have the Bills higher, but, the Bills have lost some key players at key positions, losing Stephon Diggs, losing their aging safety in Jordan Poyer. I think they lost both their safeties, Micah Hyde, too. But this team has depth on almost every single position, probably like outside of running back. But last year they were 11-6. Head coach Sean McDermott. Could Sean McDermott be on the hot seat? Possibly. Best offensive player, Josh Allen. Best defensive player, Matt Milano, who is now out for the season. Off-season grade, C-. I like what they did going out and getting Keon Coleman. I think he's going to be a good little rotational piece for the guys that they do have. They have Matt Collins, who's played well at times for different teams. I really like Khalil Shakir to step up and be their go-to slot guy, catch a lot of balls this year for them. And if Curtis Samuel stays healthy, which is a big if, they'll have an explosive run after the catch downfield guy. So, if everything clicks for them with the wide receivers, I actually think the wide receiver core could step up and play a big part in this year's game. But their bread and butter is going to be throwing to their tight ends. Dalton Kincaid was fantastic as a rookie last year, and I definitely think he's going to build upon that, and they're going to do a better job getting him into space. He's going to have a lot more touches this year. James Cook is going to establish himself truly as a top 10 running back in this league. Last year, he had almost 1,200 yards on the ground. He had almost 500 through the air. So a lot of people don't know he had a lot of receiving yards last year. And he had, I think, 11 total touchdowns, 10 total touchdowns between the floor and in the air. Really good player, man. People talk about how the Bills need to run the ball more and stuff like that, but they're really efficient at running the ball between what they do with the running backs and what they do with Josh Allen. I don't even know what Josh Allen averages per rush. It's probably something insane. And their running backs averaged over 4 yards per carry collectively last year. James Cook at 4.7. So I think the offensive line is a little underrated, and I think people are going to sleep on how effective this offense can look next year. I don't think it's going to be pretty, the most flashy, the most explosive, but I do think this team is going to be capable of regularly moving the chains. The biggest thing is their defense. They lost some players on defense. They had their best defensive player go down. They do have depth at the linebacker position, guys that have come in and played really well at different times and graded well. But I do like their front seven, all things considered, with A.J. Epinesa, Gregory Rousseau looking really good last year and looking good coming into this season. And I like their corner depth. So until one of these other teams in the division knock this team off, I still think with what they can do when they're healthy, I do think that this team can still win the division. I think their floor is 8-9. I think their ceiling is 11-6. Bills at 9. Number 8, the Baltimore Ravens. So a lot of people have the Ravens. I've seen people put the Ravens at 4 and shit, but I'm not as high on the Ravens. I think they had a schedule last year that was conducive to winning a lot of football games. They have John Harbaugh, obviously, as their coach. Fantastic coach, Hall of Fame coach John Harbaugh. And you know what they're going to do. They're going to pound the pill, do a lot of, inside running, read option stuff, quick out stuff, play action pass, attack the middle of the field and take shots down the field. They do a lot of different layering of attacks based off the fact that Lamar Jackson is so electric as a runner. Doesn't really matter who's running back there, but they've bolstered their running back core with Derrick Henry, which is huge for them. I expect Zay Flowers to build on the season he's had last year, but it really comes down to the fact that, they just don't play consistently enough offensively at times. and they haven't played great offensively in big games. And I think that's where it's going to, bite this team in the ass. They always have really close games because they have arguably the best defensive in the league. I mean, defense in the league. It's up to opinion. Pick your poison. Now you like defense, but I just think what hinders them is like Zay Flowers is good, but I think definitely Zay Flowers is more of a slot guy who could take a top off of defense. I still think they need to find that guy that's that physical, route running, pure number one wide receiver who can straight up, has the physical tools, the height, weight, speed, and the route running, the real number one guy at wide receiver. And I just don't think they have that. Bateman's not good. Aguilar's not good. Zay Flowers is good, but I think he's a little bit of limited size, overall skill set. He could definitely eat up a lot of catches. I think he could be a 1,000-yard guy. And Mark Andrews is always hurt. We don't know where we're going to get out of Mark Andrews. Rolled the dice on Mark Andrews in my fantasy league. I'd like to see them get Isaiah Likely in there a little bit more. Kind of more like a slot tight end role, like a big slot role. Their offensive line's going to be good like it always is. Defensively, they're going to be really good. Re-sign Justin Madubuike, Odafe Awe. They're going to look for him to, step up and have a good second or third year. Roquan Smith obviously is good. They lost Patrick Queen, and Trenton Simpson's going to be stepping in to fill that role, and then their secondary is really good. But I just think at times this team is not as consistent. The fact that they won 13 games last year is nuts because even some of the wins that they had, those were like close, knockdown, drag out wins. They're one of the better football teams in the league. But I think in the grand scheme of things, I think they're going to keep faltering like they always do. So I have Baltimore at 8. Number 7, the Green Bay Packers. So the Green Bay Packers surprised everyone last year. And what is it? Would it be his third year now? Third year, Jordan Love come out here and playing like he's the second coming to Aaron Rodgers. 32 touchdowns. Did make a lot of mistakes. Just like looked really good and really poised in the pocket, and he literally can make every single throw. Made great reads, eyed down the field, looked comfortable. Got a little bit of running upside if you need him to get out there. They went 9-8 last year. Matt LaFleur was their head coach. Jordan Love was their best player on offense. Jair Alexander is the best defensive player. Their offseason, I like their offseason. I give it a B+. They went out and bolstered their offensive line, getting Jordan Morgan. He was originally kind of like a swing tackle guy in college, so they're probably going to start him at right tackle. They also went out and got Javon Bullard, who's probably going to start for them at safety. The real issue with this team is like which wide receiver is going to step up. And will Love have a repeat year, which I wrote is crucial. I would say that they could have a similar or same year if no one really steps up and is the guy, but I think it would help them if one of these really good wide receivers plays out of their gourd. They have Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Jalen Reed. They got Devontae Wicks. They got Bo Melton made plays last year for them. Tight end room's okay. Luke Musgrave, Tucker Kraft, Ben Sims. They got some weapons. The big key pickup for them was they bolstered, their rushing attack by picking up Josh Jacobs. They also still have A.J. Dillon. I think if things click right for this team could be a juggernaut next year. And if someone really steps up, they could possibly be the best offense in the league next year. They're going to play a very balanced style of attack. Their wide receivers fit a bunch of different molds and roles. I just think that this is going to be a very layered offensive attack as long as the offensive line holds up. And then defensively, I think this team's really good defensively. Rashawn Gary, Kenny Clark, TJ Slayton, Preston Smith, Quay Walker, Jarnell Stokes. They signed Xavier McKinney, who's an underrated player. Jair Alexander. This team's going to be stacked on both sides of the ball, and I think they're going to be really, really good next year. Ceiling 11-6, floor 8-9. I think it's going to be more towards that ceiling. Green Bay, number 7. Number 6, the Houston Texans, record 10-7. I think it's second-year head coach DeMeco Ryans. Best offensive player, C.J. Stroud, and Stephon Diggs, wide receiver coming over from Buffalo. Best defensive player, Derek Stingley Jr. and Will Anderson on the edge. Off-season grade, an A+. I mean, you can make an argument they had the best offseason this year, not only for their free agency pickups, but also I thought they had a good draft. So you look at this team, what they did. They went out and got Stephon Diggs. So that's Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, Tank Dell. Solid offensive line here. Jeremy Tunzel, Buster Scruggs, Kenyon Green, Titus Howard, and Shaq Mason. Still have Dalton Schultz. They got Brevin Jordan with that long speed. Hit him with a switch up long speed. CJ Stroud. 3 deep at running back. They got Joe Mixon, Damian Pierce, and Cam Akers is playing good in the preseason. And then defensively, Will Anderson Jr., Fadokasi, Foloronso. They added Danielle Hunter. Christian Harris played really good. They picked up Aziz Al-Shahir. They got Derek Seeley Jr., Jamie Ward, Jalen Petrie, rookie quarterback Kwame Lassiter. They got fucking Desmond King. They got so many good players. This team's going to win their division. This team, second year could have some growing pains with all these new players. We got to see them do what they did last year again. They did improve on both sides of the ball. Can this team take off? This team right now has the ability to be a secret surprise Super Bowl team, which is nuts because the Texans aren't an old franchise. They haven't been around long. They're knocking on the door of building a really, really fucking good football team right here. I think they're going to be really good. I think offensively they're going to be good, really good. And I think defensively they're going to be just good enough, to stave off giving up those points and catch them up to the points that they're going to put up. Ceiling is 13-4. I think the sky could be the absolute limit for this team if things break right for them. So Houston, number 6. Number 5, the Bengals. Record last year, 9-8. Coach Zach Taylor. Best offensive player, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. Best defensive player, Trey Hendrickson. Offensive offseason grade is a B+. Basically comes down to the health and depth of this team, really. And I was telling my buddy last night, obviously I'm a Bengals fan, but I was telling my boy Adam last night that I really don't care, honestly, what the fuck happens this year with this team as long as they're healthy. We could not make the playoffs. As long as everyone was healthy, I could be like, okay, well, at least I know where this fucking team stands if Joe Burrow's fully healthy. And every team could have bad years. But last year, Burrow missed the second half of the season. We still went 9-8. I'd like to think we would have made a playoff run if we had Burrow because the rest of the team was decently healthy. I love what we did in the offseason. We went out and we bolstered our secondary, we're going to have this crazy rotating door in the defensive back position. Obviously we're going to start Cam Taylor-Britt, DJ Turner, Dax Hill. We got the rookie Josh Newton who's playing really well. Von Bell, Mike Hilton, Jordan Battle. We're just so deep at DB. Love our linebackers, Jermaine Pratt and Logan Wilson. Front 7, not as good as it was, but solid for our style of football as long as we can get some penetration off the edges. It looks like everyone's going to be healthy. Trey Hendrickson, BJ Hill, Sheldon Rankin, Sam Hubbard. Zach Moss is okay at running back, but I like Chase Brown to be a little more heavily involved, especially catching the ball out of the backfield. And then we picked up Amarius Mims and Jermaine Burton in the offseason, which love both of those players. And you look at it, we have Orlando. We're going to be starting, probably going to start Trenton Brown at right tackle, so we have depth at tackle. Amarius Mims looked great in the preseason. Offensive line looks solid. We got Mike Gesicki playing tight end, who's an underrated player. He made a big mistake signing with the Patriots so he could play behind their fucking tight end, who's the Hunter Henry. And it kind of made his stats lack, but I think he's going to be a big red zone target for us. And then obviously all the wide receiver weapons we have. Basically, this is going to come down to health. As long as we get Jamar Chase's contract shirt out, T. Higgins is looking good. This is going to come down to how healthy this team is. Cincinnati, number 5. 4, Philadelphia Eagles. So I wanted to rank the Eagles a little bit lower, but I can't bring myself to because I got to be honest. They still have a really good roster. But people aren't honest about some of the stuff that's gone on with this football team. They just fell off a fucking cliff last year at the end of the season and just were hot garbage and lost a bunch of fucking football games down the stretch after going. Someone got what did they go? Fucking 9 or 10-0 out the gate or some dumb shit. Ended 11-6. Best offensive player A.J. Brown. Best defensive player Jalen Carter. Off-season grade at B+. They always draft really well. I don't got to get much into that. Both sides of the ball are aging and regressing. That is the truth. It doesn't mean they're not good. But they are regressing. Do these young players take a step? Is Hurts really worth $50 million a year? Scheme can make all the difference. So he's regressed a little bit as a passer the past 2 years. Jalen Hurts is a really good football player. He's a really effective football player. Is he a high-level quarterback? I don't think so. He hasn't. He had the playoff run where he was good, and then you can make the argument he outplayed Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. That's a small sample size. Outside of that, I really think as a thrower of the football, he's in the B range. Now he's moving to. They dropped their offensive and defensive coordinators, and now he's moving to a Kellen Moore system where they pass the fuck out of the football. We're going to find out how accurate of a passer he is, how good of a decision maker he is last year, because the teams that beat them last year were teams that disguised their coverages really well and forced him to actually make decisions. This team clicks best when they're playing balance and Jalen Hurts has wide open guys to deliver the ball to. You got to be able to deliver dudes open, fit balls into tight places, have really good ball placement, and be accurate with your ball placement. Those are the things he's going to have to show going forward to optimize what this team could be with this style of offense. They lost offensive linemen. Their defensive backs are getting older. They did pick up some young defensive backs, but Darius Slay and James Bradbury are starting to get old. I think there's areas where this team could be had. They're still a really fucking good football team. They have young players and depth all over the position. They have two of the best offensive tackles in the league. They just picked up Saquon Barkley, who I think is going to catch a lot of balls out of the backfield because Jalen Hurts is going to be checking down a lot in this scheme. Like I said, I think the top half of the division's regressed a little bit. I could see a world where this team is not as good as it was last year. I could see this team being 9-8 if their struggles continue. But I also could see this team clicking and being really, really good if they draw their plays up right and everyone's healthy. Could go 12-5. Philadelphia at 4. Number 3, the Detroit Lions, 12-5. Head coach Dan Campbell. Best offensive players Amon-Ra St. Brown and wide receiver Penei Sewell, or wide receiver. Offensive tackle Penei Sewell. Best defensive player Aiden Hutchinson on the edge. Off-season grade an A-. I thought they had one of the best off seasons last year. Not only did I thought they drafted well, but they also picked up really good players this off season in the free agency. Like a little bit beat up in terms of his health and stuff like that, but they picked up DJ Reader, who they have him listed on the pup. I don't know what the deal is with that because I don't really pay too much to Detroit. But I don't know. He's always fucking hurt. DJ Reader's missed 40% of his whole entire career, which is why we didn't pay him. When he's healthy, absolute monster. You can make an argument he's the best run stuffer in the league, which is something that they really need. But if you look at this team, offensive line, one of the best offensive lines in the league. Sam Laporta was stellar as a rookie last year. Jared Goff, really good decision maker, super accurate in all areas of the field, very poised, underrated quarterback. Jameson Williams, to me, this is his last year to prove he's not a bust. They got Amon-Ra St. Brown. There's not much to be said there. Can run the whole route tree. Sure hands. Yak for days. Love their running backs. David Montgomery in the red zone and Jahmyr Gibbs is just a multi-tool skill set back. Defensively is where this team's going to be interesting. Do they take that next step and become better on defense? And I think that's, what's held this team back. They got Marcus Davenport, DJ Reader if he's healthy, underrated Elam McNeil, Aiden Hutchinson, Jack Campbell, who played really well last year as a rookie, and he's going to step up. Picked up Charlton Davis. They have a solid secondary. Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph. They picked up Terry and Arnold, Amik Robertson. They got depth at corner. I think this team is going to be about as good as it was last year. I mean, in this division is actually going to be tougher with Chicago being better. I could see their floor being 10-7, but I could also see them being super, super good, just like last year. Maybe getting one more win, 12-5, 13-4. Detroit, number 3. Number 2, the San Francisco 49ers record 12-5 last year. Coach Kyle Shanahan, best offensive players. Christian McCaffrey and Trent Williams, best defensive players. Nick Bosa and Fred Warner. Offseason grade C. They didn't really do much in the offseason. I mean, they let a couple pieces go. They re-signed some players. Picked up my boy Forster's boy, Slick Ricky Pearsall. Let's go. Shout out to Forster, the Slick Ricky. Future free agents on the horizon. They're still in talks about what the hell they want to do with Brandon Ayuk. Personally, the window's still open. They need to keep Brandon Ayuk because Brandon Ayuk's the only team on the dude that's super healthy and consistent all the time. If you get rid of Brandon Ayuk and then Debo goes down like a punk and then Kittle goes down like a punk, which these dudes do all the time, you're not gonna have anyone to throw the ball to. They got to re-sign Brandon Ayuk for the right price, but they got to re-sign him. Obviously, defensively, I don't need to go into it. They're friggin' stacked in all levels of the defense. Their front seven's gnarly. They're deep at DB. This team's going to be just as good as it was last year, especially if they keep Brandon Ayuk. I just feel like you got to keep Brandon Ayuk as like kind of just like a little insurance valve because if Debo or Kittle go down, we're going to find out how good Brock Purdy is if those guys go down. You ain't got Brandon Ayuk, you're going to find out real quick. But I still like this team to be super competitive. I still like this team to probably at least go to the NFC Championship. Purdy's underrated. This team's super fucking good. San Francisco 49ers, floor, 10 wins. I don't even think their floor is 10 wins. It's just like they're going to be really good. Ceiling, 13-4. And obviously, number one, the Kansas City Chiefs. Last year, their record is 11-6. Their coach is Andy Reid. Best offensive player, obviously, Patrick Mahomes. Best defensive player, Chris Jones, a D tackle. Offseason grades, a B. In the offseason, they re-signed some players. I think they did a smart move, letting L'Jarius Sneed walk because Trent McDuffie, in my opinion, is the real deal. You don't need to spend in this league. It's more about depth in scheme when it comes to stopping the pass. You don't need to spend too much money at corner, we've seen. But they picked up Xavier Worthy, a really good downfield threat. Get him the ball in open space. He can make dudes miss. I have my reservations about Xavier Worthy because I don't think he's like the greatest route runner. But there's going to be a lot of fucking speed on this team between him and Hollywood Brown. Rashee Rice can get his fucking head out of his ass. Rashee Rice is a number one. I think he's going to be missing games this year. O-line's going to be good. They're going to be starting a rookie at tackle, Kingsley Sumataya. Obviously, they got Joe Tooney, Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, Juwan Taylor. They got Travis Kelce, all their tight ends, Isaiah Pacheco, Clyde Edwards of the Hilaire. And then obviously Patrick Mahomes. This team's going to score a bunch of points. They still got Sky Moore and McCole Hardman on their bench. So they got depth at wide receiver. They weren't as good offensively in the regular season. And then obviously they schemed it up and sliced and diced in the postseason and played really good balanced football. I think they're going to lean a little bit more on Pacheco now. And probably give him more. I think they should give him more touches in the pass game. Get him out on little out routes and screen routes. I think he's effective in that shit. Defensively, I think they're going to be really good. George Karlaftis played really well last year. Chris Jones. Mike Dana's an underrated defensive end. Drew Tranquil, Nick Bolton, Leo Chanel, Trent McDuffie, Justin Reed. This team's going to be solid. I do think it's deceiving, though. I do think that they're going to have a similar regular season as they did last year. They're going to go around 11-6, and everyone's going to be like, oh, whatever. And then they're going to tighten it all up, and they're just going to be as good as they always are in the playoffs. Get your coach, get your quarterback, build a team around those two things. Scheme and coaching matters. Decision-making at certain times in games matters. Special teams matter. This team is just... What makes this team so great is no matter what they put out there on the field, and it's similar to the Patriots. It's just they're so tight in terms of their scheme, their strategies, their poise, putting dudes in the right positions to succeed, and the two dudes calling the shots are just the two best dudes in the league calling the shots. It's really that simple. They're just smarter. They out-scheme everyone. They put their money in the right places. Keep bolstering the offensive line. Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid will take care of the rest. So until Kansas City regresses really bad, then they're number one. Let me know what you guys think. interested for the season. Hoping to have a podcast here soon with all the guys to try and get everyone on to talk about football. It's kind of like pulling teeth. So we'll see. Hopefully sometime this next week or so, I could get everyone together. We could get everyone's thoughts on the season and try to parse out, who we think are going to make playoff runs, what teams are going to win divisions, maybe dark horses, talk about, season awards and things of that nature, and have a good time with that. So let me know what you guys think about my power rankings, and I'll holla at you. Love you guys.